Hello, my name is Don Carruthers. I'm with the Canadian Parks Collective for Innovation and Leadership. I'm very pleased to be joining you here today for a panel on access to nature, programs, facilities, and information. I'm coming to you to the traditional and ongoing territory of the Coast Salish First Nations, specifically the Squamish First Nations on the west coast of Vancouver in Canada. I'm very pleased to be joined by some panelists today to speak to this topic. Candy Harrington with Emerging Horizons, John Kenwright with Parks Victoria in Australia, Bonnie Lewkowicz with the Bay Area Outdoor and Recreation Program, and Rike with British Columbia Parks. The exercise that I've given to the panels today to explore this topic is the idea of a rose, a thorn, and a bud. We want to do our best to make outdoor recreation and tourism programs more accessible and create this blooming rose bush of great opportunities. Every time you're exposed to a new rose bush, you realize there are roses, blooms that have happened already, thorns that can prick you, so lessons that we can learn from, and buds, new opportunities and hopes for the future. So each panelist has been asked to provide a rose, a thorn, and a bud from their professional experience in this area of work. For example, my own rose in my career in parks and protected areas, the opportunities for inclusion and accessibility, not just for serving people who visit and experience natural settings, but who become employees, like the two employees you see here. Both work for parks and protected areas, both have different abilities and contribute greatly to the organization. That's been a great rose in my career. A thorn is that regardless of who you're talking to, you often come into conversations about risk of outdoor play. And it takes time to encourage people to see the benefits of risky, adventurous play for anybody, regardless of their abilities. And my bud is that when you improve accessibility and inclusion for one group, you can improve it for everybody. You can make a sign that's got tactile elements for somebody visually impaired as something very engaging and exciting for a child who can now feel the way that a grizzly bear claw curves. And the height for a wheelchair can also be great for kids and families alike. So the bud is the opportunity for multiple perspectives to complement each other as we create outdoor natural experiences. So with that explanation, we'll turn it to our panelists, beginning with Bonnie Lewkowicz, who's going to share her rose. Over to you, Bonnie.
Thank you, Don. And I'm coming to you today from the native lands of the Ohlone peoples. And my rose is actually, I would say, a bush at this time, but it's going to become a big climber. And it's a program called Birdability. And the National Audubon, which is a NGO that protects birds and the places they need, several years ago, recognized that they could be doing more to serve birders with disabilities. So they formed a committee and held some events, and were actually quite surprised by how high the interest was. They did this for, a few years, and then two of the committee members decided that they wanted to branch off and start their own program. Both of them did have physical disabilities, and they wanted to solely focus on what they are calling birding for everybody and everybody. So they do a variety of things, and primarily they have a website that has a lot of resources on there about how to plan and host an accessible birding event. But one of the biggest programs is a crowdsourced map of the world, although right now it's mostly in the US, that identifies places that have accessibility where people can go birding. And there's a lot of detailed information about these locations, so someone can decide for themselves, this is where I would like to go because they have X, Y, Z access features. They created a survey tool that you can download on their website or print it out in print. And it allows you to have a checklist when you're going to visit a place, and then you can upload it to this map. So it's really great. And why I love the website is that it bridges what I call the information barrier which enables people to decide before they go if it's going to meet their access needs. This is critical. And I've spent much of my career trying to eliminate that information barrier because I see it as one of the first elemental steps towards inclusion. And it's just great to have this information in advance. Excuse me. It helps to eliminate the fear and not being able to participate. And it's very empowering and confidence building. And it's also something that can be done for very little resources, yet have a big impact. So I just really encourage you to look at your websites or any promotional material and see where you might be able to add accessibility content.
Fantastic. That's a great example and a great opportunity for people to learn from others and their successes. How about you, Candy? Could you share with us your rose, please?
Certainly. My rose is a place called Wilderness on Wheels, WOW for short, and they are an accessible wilderness recreation facility. They're at about 9,000 feet in Colorado near Kenosha Pass. Now, WOW was formed back in 1986, and if you think about it, there wasn't a lot being done in 1986 about accessible outdoors. It was founded by a man named Roger West, and it was just his dream to get everybody, no matter what their physical abilities, into the wilderness. Today, WOW's grown, and it includes a mile-long boardwalk, and that's my slide here. It winds through the pines up to the ridgetop. They also have another half-mile boardwalk that kind of meanders along a mountain stream. They have an accessible fishing pier. They have adaptive fishing equipment that you can use. Their pond is stocked with rainbow trout. They're almost jumping out at you. And now you can certainly visit WOW for the day, but you can also spend the night there. They have accessible campsites. Some of the campsites have raised platforms, tent platforms at wheelchair height, so you can just transfer over there. Some of them just have level pads for a tent. They have some huts that are covered and you can transfer into them, their wheelchair height, and just roll out your sleeping bag. Now, if you don't want to rough it that much, they also have 2 cabins. One is kind of a little more rustic. It's a dry cabin, but it does have electricity and there's an accessible outhouse next door. And the other cabin is absolutely gorgeous. It's on the ridge top and it does have water and power and an accessible bathroom. Now, the great thing about WOW is that it was constructed, all these boardwalks were constructed with volunteers, and it's maintained by volunteers, and it's, you know, they have monetary donations, they have in-kind donations. There's no real charge to go out and use the boardwalk or camp. Of course, they do accept donations. There's a minimal charge to use the cabin. So, economic circumstances are not going to be a barrier to go out and use this and to enjoy the outdoors. And they also have a great music festival once a year, and all the donations from that go to keep up the boardwalk and the facilities. And a great new program they have to get city folk in the outdoors is they've paired with a wheelchair rental place in Denver, and they can bring them out to enjoy the boardwalk. And my takeaway from this is if you have something that you want to do, like Roger West, if you have a dream, if you have a passion, align yourself with like-minded people and make your access project a reality. Roger did it, you can do it too.
Fantastic. That's a great example, Candy, of just the community coming together and doing so many amazing interwoven things. So thank you for sharing. John, let's turn it over to you, and you can speak from a perspective in an agency and some of the work that's been done over the years in Parks Victoria. So over to you.
Thanks, Don. Before I start, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that I'm on, the Wurundjeri people. Pay my respects to elders past and present. The rose for Park Victoria was the park access information that we have developed in consultation with people with disabilities to enable them to get out to nature in a lot of our beautiful parks across Victoria. In recent years, we did quite a lot of consultation and engagement with people with disabilities, trying to get an idea of the type of park information that they required to plan their park visit. And we discovered that the information was quite varied according to their abilities of what they wanted on our website. And so, for example, people with low mobility who may be in wheelchairs wanted good access information about the physical access. They wanted to know what the car parks and various paths and facilities were like, whether they can get access to those. People with autism were wanting different information, and people who are blind and vision impaired, it was different again. So we really tried to actually compile a range of information that was available for people to actually make an informed choice of where they could go in our parks, and also to help plan their visits. So as part of that process, we developed a park accessibility evaluation manual for our rangers in our parks to help compile information about our visitor sites. So when visitors with disabilities would visit those parks, they'll have more detailed information. Information was not just what the level of access is, but they wanted good descriptions of everything and also good images so they can really see what they were going to actually visit and get an idea of the level of access. People with autism, particularly families with children with autism, wanted resources such as for children with autism to help prepare their park visit. And we call these social scripts. And we developed these, have these available on our website for families to actually download to prepare their child for their first park visit. People wanted information about where our adaptive equipment was. They also wanted information about our All Abilities walks. So we did a number of short videos which were filmed on some of our walks to actually show them what the level of access was on those walks, and also provide commentary about where the nearest amenities were and what were the attractions on those walks. And these were filmed by a person with a disability in a wheelchair, and he undertook all the various commentary. And so he had a really good understanding of what the information that visitors with low mobility required. So there's a whole range of information that we've been compiling, and we also found that they wanted a dedicated page for it, as well as having that information integrated on the dedicated individual pages with the other visit information.
That's great. Thanks, John. So let's go to our last rows here. Rike, so some of the things that have been successes for you in your work and with BC Parks.
Yeah, thank you, Don. Before I dive in, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge with deep respect the Songhees, Esquimalt, and Wasanich peoples on whose traditional territory I feel very fortunate to live and work on here today in beautiful Victoria, Canada. So my rows, I would like to share with all of you a few different opportunities that we have created over the past decade as provincial parks and protected areas have seen a significant increase in the diversity of park users. BC Parks recognizes the importance to signal that parks are a place where everyone belongs. And in 2016, we established an accessibility committee to receive input from the community. And since then, we have been pursuing an accessibility guarantee with a vision for making our facilities in all of our 330 front country park sites universally accessible. And front country in this context means accessible by car. In total, we manage over 1,000 parks and protected areas in British Columbia. Guaranteeing improved accessibility means that many more park users can enjoy British Columbia's provincial parks. In 2017, we worked with a contractor to develop a comprehensive universal design guideline document for all our facilities. And this document is a living document and can be frequently updated. And we use it as a guideline for our park staff to update our BC Parks facilities. We also partnered in the same year with the Rike Foundation to host a training session for staff and especially our park rangers. And these training sessions, they're very well received and they've become very popular. And we are looking into a train-the-trainer model in the future so that we have a plan for long-term implementation of training. Then in 2019, we worked with the Rike Foundation again to conduct accessibility audits to provide recommendations for improvement so that we can increase the front country park accessibility more. A total of over 271 locations were audited during this assessment, and the data is intended to provide information in regard to accessibility, priorities, and costs. And we use it also to ensure that park users can find trip planning information on our BC Parks website. The accessibility audits highlighted transportation as one of the barriers to enjoying outdoor recreation in our provincial parks. So since then, we have, it's just as one example, partnered with one organization called Park Bus, and they provide transportation to provincial parks in the proximity of Vancouver. So a big community hub in the south coast region of British Columbia. In 2019, we're also very fortunate to have partnered with Parks Canada, the Canucks Autism Network, and Power to Be to host a Learn to Camp event for participants on the autism spectrum and their families at the Cypress Provincial Park, which is a park near Vancouver. This event was a huge success, and we are all looking forward to hosting similar events like this in the future. And you can see on the photo here, 2 of our park rangers and a family enjoying their time at this event. In a nutshell, over the years, BC Parks has been steadily working on improving accessibility to provincial parks. And this work is an ongoing work, and we're excited to do it.
Wonderful, thanks. Great examples, again, great examples of collaboration. And all 4 of you, I appreciate you sharing these roses, these successes. And I hope people who are viewing this recording get a chance to see that there are successes to build upon and lessons we can learn from that are great successes. We're going to turn now to some of the thorns, though, some of those lessons that maybe were hard lessons, things that are still frustrations or places that there's still an opportunity to improve how we approach this topic. So we'll start with you, Candy. I was struck by the story you shared and will present to us here. So over to you.
Well, thank you. My thorn actually comes from a tale when I was researching one of my national park books. So I go into the visitor center like I always do and ask if there are any accessible trails around. And a volunteer, eager to please me, directs me to what she thinks is an accessible trail. So my husband and I go over there, and we encountered a stairway, much like the one in my photo right there. And we looked all around, and we could not find anything to get to the accessible trail besides the stairway. So we're both able-bodied, up we went, and the trail was fine, but getting to it was an issue. So back to the visitor center I go, and I asked the volunteer why she recommended that. And she told me that all of her stroller parents absolutely love the trail. So she figured that since the strollers can go on the trail, then so can wheelchairs. And well, I had to explain to her that we can carry a stroller up the stairs, but you can't really do that with a wheelchair. And then she had her aha moment. She got it. A little training would have really helped that situation not to happen. And my takeaway from all this is, like Bonnie said earlier, providing accurate access information is essential. And the thing is, it doesn't have to cost a lot to do it, to train all of your employees, and don't forget your volunteers.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, a good thorn and a good aha that comes from it. And related, Rike, to your thorn that you wanted to present. So I'll pass it to you.
For sure. Thanks, Don. Yeah, so BC Parks, we are trying to make our accessibility information available on our website. Unfortunately, this information can be sometimes really hard to find, and we currently don't have a direct link to our camping reservation system. So we recognize that our website needs to become more accessible. And in following a user-centered design approach, we consulted with different user groups in the accessibility community and beyond to find out where the specific needs are and how we can redesign the website to really help remove those barriers. So that's kind of our thorn, something we're working on. So based on this feedback, we are going to change the website design, the functionality, and the content, and hopefully can improve accessibility. And something that we have to remember, though, is that those needs change and that it's not always easy to make these changes. quickly, especially within our more rigid government agency structures. So I think continuous consultation with the end users and listening to user needs is really important, and in improving accessibility. Yeah, and it never ends with one project. Once it's finished, it's an ongoing process. And in the photo I shared here, you can see a young fella with Down syndrome reading a map in a provincial park.
Mm-hmm. Great, thanks. And maybe I'll use that to bridge to your Thorn, John, which is related and takes it from a different angle though too.
Thanks, Don. Yeah, the Thorn for us was, we received very good positive feedback about the type of park access information that we're providing. And obviously this is ongoing. We will be building on it for many more parks. But we discovered in the last couple of months when we did a lot of community engagement that a number of people with disabilities weren't aware of this information on their website. A number of them weren't visiting our website or haven't even considered some of the accessible experiences on offer in nature that we had available. And so it really struck us that we need to do a lot more promotion through various disability organisational networks and recreational networks, etc., where we do ongoing promotions and posts on social media about what's available in parks to really generate more of that traffic to our website to ensure that they get that information and they can really get out to parks and really enjoy themselves. So that was a real learning experience for us, and that we're building on that now.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's great. Yeah, that great idea to invite people to the information so that they can find what they need. Bonnie, I'm going to go to your Thorn. I left it for last because I like this one because, as you said, it's sort of a thorn that became something that was more of a rose. So I'll leave it to you to explain to everybody what you wanted to share here.
Okay, yes, it was a painful thorn at first. So in the San Francisco Bay Area where I live, we have a very popular tourist destination called Alcatraz Island, which has a storied history as a federal prison, and it's run by national parks. You have to take a ferry to get there, which was wheelchair accessible and still is. But once you get to the island at the landing, to get to the main attraction, you have to climb up several very long and very, very steep hills, which truthfully, a lot of people have trouble accessing whether they have a disability or not. So in order to become a little more inclusive, national parks thought they came up with this great idea to build a room, a windowless room at the ferry landing that anyone that had trouble climbing up the hill could go into this room and watch a video of the cell house. Well, as you can imagine, everyone else that you came with gets to go up the hill and experience it live. So as you might imagine, that wasn't a very good alternative. So they found that people with disabilities weren't taking up on this opportunity. And so they rethought things and came up with a different approach. And as you can see in this slide here, they came up with an electrical vehicle. So it's not causing any damage to the historic site. And anyone that has difficulty accessing the hill can get aboard this wheelchair accessible electric cart that takes you up to the top, and the cell house is all accessible, so you get to enjoy that. It was immediately very popular, as you might imagine, and they now have several shuttles to accommodate the need. And it was a hard lesson learned, but it turned into a rose.
Yeah, fantastic, and a great story to share of how something can change and learn from potentially a misstep into something that could become more positive and inclusive. And as we've all discussed preparing for this panel, there is ongoing work in creating accessible nature experiences and inclusive outdoor experiences in tourism. So we'll turn now to our buds, the hopes everybody has for what's possible in the future, promising things that we hope turn into new flowers, new blossoms. So let's start with you, John. You had a great bud to share with us.
Yeah, thanks, Don. We've received really positive feedback about our series of short videos on our All Abilities walks. we had a lot of positive feedback from people with disabilities about having a person with the lived experience of having low mobility doing the videos and doing the commentary. And it really made us think about how we can go further with this and actually do filming of various recreational activities in our parks to provide another medium of information for people to actually plan their visits. So we're looking at developing short videos now for adaptive mountain bike riding in our parks, for camping, for fishing, for canoeing, a whole range of activities. Because from the feedback we've been getting, it really inspires people to get out there in nature and get active. And by seeing these short videos produced by somebody with a lived experience, it really motivates them to get active.
Yeah, fantastic. It's an exciting program, and it's great to hear that it's growing. All right, Candy, how about you? How about your bud?
My bud is a bit different. My bud is actually a person. Her name is Natalie Bostow, and she is the track chair program manager for Staunton State Park over in Pine, Colorado. And I picked a person because one person can really make a big difference. Now, a track chair, and that's my slide, is actually what a lot of people call all-terrain wheelchairs. And they're like a regular wheelchair, except instead of wheels, you've got these tank-like tracks. And the great thing about it is that with these chairs, people with mobility issues can explore trails that are not accessible. You can't make the trail accessible, find a way to get people onto the trails. In any case, not only does Natalie manage this program for the Action Track Chairs, but she's very enthusiastic about it, and she takes her track chairs all over the state and tries to convince other stakeholders to start their own track chair programs. Well, because of her, there's now a new track chair program at Bar Lake State Park. So again, my takeaway is one person can really make a difference in making the outdoors more accessible. So don't think you can't, just, go for it. Go, Natalie.
Right on. That's great, Candy. How about you, Rike? What's your bud?
Yeah, thanks, Don. So beyond the built environment, we are actively promoting accessibility by partnering with community groups. And here in the picture, you can see one of our community partners, the Community Recreational Initiative Society, short CRIS, who have volunteers who can help folks who need it with a trail rider. So through collaborations like this, and through also a collaboration with our provincial car insurance provider, which offers specific license plates that when purchased, that those proceeds go to provincial park enhancements. And BC Parks, we are able to provide funding to our community partners to purchase adaptive recreational equipment like trail riders, mobi mats, adaptive kayaks, and so on, to support park users with different abilities and their recreational needs. The idea is also that the equipment is kept with the community organization at either a facility near a park, in a park, and that it can be used free of charge by park visitors. So we are currently in the process of finding community partners with the end goal of having adaptive equipment in as many front country parks available as possible. So that's our bud. That's something we're working towards.
Fantastic. That's great. And Bonnie, for our final bud here.
All right. So we saw with the pandemic and the Black Lives Matter movement that it really shed light on a lot of the inequities that many people experience, including access to the outdoors. And at least here in the US, for the most part, the discussions around diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice have focused on race and overlooks the intersectionality of people, in that we all have multiple identities, including people with disabilities who can fall into those race demographics as well. And since my work is all about getting access to the outdoors, I have taken on the mission to make sure that disability gets included in the diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice conversation. And so far, the results have been that our organization has seen a big increase in the number of disability trainings that have been requested. And with things going virtual, because of that, we've been able to, have a far greater reach with these trainings. And so I feel like we're just at the beginning of including more marginalized groups in the DEI conversation. The trainings have the potential to really make a big difference. And in this slide here, this was actually our first in-person training that I did last week with some youth of people of color and Indigenous, Black, Brown people of color. And they call themselves Justice Outside. And in the past, our organization has applied to them for funding. And we've been denied because our focus was disability. And so when they reached out to us to do this training, it's like, oh, wow, now they're maybe recognizing that they could probably reach some disabled people of color and Black Indigenous folks if they had some more training. So it's a great relationship that we started. And, who knows, we might get some funding from them in the future. But I think they really, and it's a give because we learned a lot from them just as well. So, that's the importance of partnerships. We all learn.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Thanks, Bonnie, and thanks to all of you for indulging in the exercise of a rose and a thorn and a bud to frame some of your thoughts around the topic of accessible tourism, inclusion in nature. And, as we discussed, there's some kind of summary thoughts or some threads that pulled through all of what you shared in terms of a rose, that changing attitudes is free. It's the least costly part of inclusion, and it can make a major difference when you start to listen to others, to have dialogue with them, and to work together. And that there's a common thorn that you can start to see, which is that sometimes people don't go far enough. They don't realize what's possible because they don't think they can do everything. But these small steps can grow and build on each other, and you end up with champions, and you end up with partners and new approaches. And that leads us to that bud of collaboration. Even working with the four of you has been a pleasure and an opportunity to see how we can learn from each other and build on our successes and experience. I'd like to turn it over to all of you, though, for some final thoughts, just to get a sense of having listened to each other, having taken the time to prepare this panel. Maybe we'll start with you, Bonnie, if you have any thoughts, sort of a last sentence, having heard everybody, that you want to share with attendees of this session.
Okay. I will go back to this saying that if you build it, they will come. Doesn't necessarily work for marginalized communities because they're not necessarily used to thinking that something is for them. So I instead say, if you build it, why will they come? And you need to let them know about it.
Fantastic. Yeah, great point. How about you, Candy? Final thoughts?
Well, I think you kind of hit it on the head a little bit there about dialogue. I think it's incredibly important that those that represent consumers and the stakeholders do have dialogues about this and understand each other's challenges. And perhaps then they can work together to overcome some of the hurdles and make things more accessible out there.
Mm-hmm. Great. That's a great point. And how about you, John?
I think it's very important, particularly for park services, to really engage with people with disability in co-designing of new facilities. The importance of having universal design facilities, so not only ensures that they're accessible for people in wheelchairs, but accessible for older visitors and families with children in strollers and a whole range of groups. And so it's really looking at that broader picture and really looking at how we can create more accessible experiences in nature. And sometimes that is forgotten by the planning people, and they really need to look at very early in the concept stage of projects.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Really great point. Rike, how about you?
Yeah, I second what everyone else has mentioned before already. And I'd like to include staff for us at the Species Parks, the government agency. Our commitment to the accessibility guarantee has really established a culture of inclusion across the agency. And that not only includes our park user, but also of staff and volunteers as well. So extending accessibility also in thinking about making workplaces more accessible as well.
Yeah, fantastic. And lots of opportunity in what you've all shared. It has been a real pleasure to work with you. And I thank the organizers for bringing us together. Thanks to Martin. It's been a great conversation to have. We are under time, so I'm going to end it at this. Thank you all so much for your time.